So just before we actually start going through the session, there's going to be a way for you to ask questions throughout, and at the end of this session, it's not through using Teams. So you'll notice that you can't use the chat here and that there isn't a Q&A, but you can submit questions on Slido. So all you have to do is type in slido.com and then it will prompt you for a code and you just have to put in Homerton. There'll be a reminder of that on every slide. So if you think you have a question later on and you forgot how to access this, then you can go and do that. I'll also have this open on the final slide as well. So you can always write down any questions on paper or wherever you want to write them down and then submit them at the end if that's easier, just so that you don't have to have multiple tabs open. But that's the way that we will be enabling you to interact throughout this session. So this is just an overview of the programme. Today we're going to be looking at universities, courses and colleges and how to choose. We'll then look at financing university in the next session. Then we'll look at how to write an impressive personal statement. You will then get to meet some Cambridge students and ask them any questions that you have. Then you'll get a session on written assessments, 2 sessions on Cambridge interviews. Each of those 2 will be targeted at either arts and humanities or more science-based subjects. And finally, there'll be a session that goes over everything, a debrief on how to make a competitive application. What we're going to look at in today's session is firstly where you are now and what the timeline looks like in terms of your application to university. Then we're going to look at what university is, how many places there are to study and what it can offer you. I'm assuming that a lot of you do want to go to university because you have applied for this programme, but it's still worth knowing what it actually means to go to university. Types of universities and the specific type at Cambridge called the collegiate system. We'll look at teaching, social life, and then we'll have a look at combinations of subjects and how they affect your university course choice, how to choose a college, and finally what you can be doing now to prepare for all of that. And you'll be able to ask questions throughout, as I've already mentioned. They'll at the bottom of all of these slides, you can see how you can ask questions. So go to slido.com and put in the code Homerton and you can then put any questions in there. You can do that throughout the session or you can just do that at the end. If I'm looking this way, it's because I have the presentation on another screen. So it's not because I'm not looking at the camera. So where you are now. So you should all be in year 12 or S5 in a school in the UK. You've probably chosen your A-levels or equivalent qualifications. You might know what you want to do after you finish school. Can you raise your hand if you have an idea of what you might want to do after you finish school? Quite a few of you, actually lots of you. And again, I'm expecting probably a lot of you, but put your hand up if you are definitely thinking of applying to university. That is lots of you. And put your hand up if you're thinking of applying to Cambridge or Oxford. Lots of hands are still up. That's lots of you. It does make sense to be signed up for a programme that is run by Cambridge, but bear in mind that if you are sat here and you're not actually thinking of applying to Cambridge or Oxford, then actually there'll be lots of information that's still really relevant, and it might be that you come out of this and you think, actually, Cambridge isn't somewhere that I want to apply, and that's absolutely fine. We're running this because we want you to be aware of the options that are out there for you, and we want you to make those decisions with confidence that you know what they actually mean. So this slide takes you through the application timeline, which we'll go into in a lot more depth throughout this programme, but this is just an overview. So firstly, you'll be choosing a course, and we'll be talking about choosing a course in the session today. Then this is a Cambridge specific bubble, the number 2, choose a college or make an open application. So again, we'll be talking about that today, but when you apply to Cambridge, you do have to pick a college that you are selecting to apply to, or you can choose not to pick one and to make what we call an open application. The next thing you'll be doing is checking if there are any tests or assessments that you have to take for your subject, and if there are, making sure that you're registered for those and you know how to take them. After that, you'll be putting together your UCAS application with something called your personal statement that we'll look at later on in this course. You'll also have in there your predicted grades and a reference from your teacher and your choices, your 5 choices of universities and courses, and that's something that we'll look at today, so how to make those choices about universities and courses. You'll be submitting that application by the 15th of October if you're looking at Cambridge, Oxford, medicine, dentistry, or I think that is most, or veterinary medicine. And it will be around mid-January, the deadline for if you're looking at another university. But if you are applying to Cambridge or one of those other courses as one of your options, then you have to make all of those decisions beforehand. You have to have your application ready by the 15th of October. The next thing you'll have to do is to submit a little additional form that Cambridge sends you once you've submitted your application. It's called the My Cambridge application, and it's just got some additional questions in there. I'll have in the session on assessments, in the session on personal statements, there'll be a little extra bit about this additional form. After that, you will be submitting any written work if you get asked to submit some written work, and taking a test or an assessment if you have one to take. There'll be a whole session on how to do well in those assessments, so you don't need to worry about that now. The next bit, and this is applicable to Cambridge, Oxford, and also quite a few other courses at other universities, you might get an interview or 2 or 3, and if you get interviewed, that will happen, for Cambridge, that will happen in usually the first 2 weeks of December, and we'll have 2 sessions on looking at exactly how to do well in a Cambridge interview. Finally, in January, in January of your year 13, you get the decision about whether or not you're made an offer for the universities that you've applied to. This is particularly for Cambridge, you'll definitely get it at that point in January. You might get some of the other decisions early as well, or they might wait until after the deadline has passed for those other universities, which is in January, before they get back to you. But you'll definitely hear back from Cambridge in January about whether or not you're made an offer. And if you are made an offer, then it would usually be conditional on you receiving certain grades in your A-levels, unless you've already taken those qualifications and you already have the grades. So that was a quick overview of what the application process looks like, but we will be going into a lot of depth throughout the whole process. I can see some people have already submitted some questions on Slido, which is really good to know that it's working. I'm just going to check if any of them are sort of relevant right now. Do all of our teachers make our reference, or does one that we pick have the task of doing it? So usually it will be one main person that's submitting that reference for you. It's unlikely that you'll be able to pick that member of staff. Probably it will be assigned to you. Every school does it differently. It might be your tutor, it might be somebody in a guidance team of some kind, it might be just one of your teachers. And in terms of whether it's done with multiple people, usually, if possible, the person who's submitting it might ask for information from some of your other teachers just to find out a bit more about how you're doing in your particular subjects. Why is the Oxbridge application needed so early compared to the others? Because we do a lot, because we look at a huge amount of things. A lot of universities will just look at your predicted grades and your personal statement. Because we have assessments and interviews, it just takes us a lot more time to go through the process and to select people, and that's why it is earlier. Will we get a recording? Yes, so we're planning to send out the recordings at the end of all of this program to encourage you to come to the sessions, but it is being recorded. I think I'll move on and then I'll keep answering some of the questions throughout and at the end, just to make sure that we get through the content. What is university? So I'm not going to ask you this question because I think a lot of you have a really good sense of what it is in terms of those 3 words that come to your mind. But essentially, it's a place where you'll go, where you can choose to go to after you finish school if you want to keep learning, and there are many reasons why you might choose to do that. A little bit about something called the Russell Group. Put your hand up. I know some of you still have your hand up. Put your hand up if you've heard of the Russell Group. That is quite a few of you. It's a group of 24 universities that are UK universities that are world-class, research intensive, that have really incredible courses, and they produce lots of the research that is produced in UK universities, and they have huge impacts across the globe. It doesn't mean that you have to go to one of these 24 universities, but it means that if you want to aim high and you're not quite sure which ones to have a look at, then they are a really good group to have a look at. I'm just letting people in. How many places do you think there are to study in the UK, and how many courses? I'm just going to let people put in the Q&A if anyone wants to take a guess. Number of universities that you can study at in the UK and number of courses. I'm not ignoring the other questions in the Q&A. I will just get to those later. Somebody says 200 courses. 128 universities and 10,000 plus courses. That's quite close. So it's over 295 universities and over 30,000 courses for you to choose from. That's a huge amount of options for you out there, and it means that it's really worth doing your research, making sure that you're making the right choice for you. University enables you to study a subject or maybe a few subjects that you enjoy in greater depth than you did in school. You get to be taught by researchers and professors who are experts in their fields. That doesn't mean that your teachers are not experts, but it means that those people at university are spending much more time doing their own research rather than spending all of their time teaching you. And in a place like Cambridge, you'll be taught by people who are really at the forefront in their field, who might be in the news for the work that they're doing. So it's very exciting if you're passionate about a subject to be taught by those people. You get to gain qualifications for the future, gain independence, sometimes move away from home, try new activities, make friends, have fun. get support every step of the way, do a lot more independent studying. And at Cambridge, we also have quite short terms and quite long holidays. Our terms are 8 weeks long, and the holidays between those terms are 6 weeks long. So if you're a bit worried about going somewhere that's far away from home, then you can bear in mind that you would actually have a lot of time to go home between those terms. I'm now going to briefly talk you through different types of universities, and then I'll focus on the collegiate system. So there are city universities where all of the buildings connected to the university are spread out across a city. Then there's campus universities where everything is on one site, a bit more like a school. And finally, there's collegiate universities, which Cambridge and Oxford are, and the way that they work is kind of a mix between a city and a campus university. So you have all of the buildings, lots of buildings connected to the university spread out across the city in the same way that a city university has. But it's also got these 31 colleges that are like mini campuses spread out across the city, where students will be living, where they'll be eating, spending a lot of their time, but they'll be going out to different buildings, different departments for different subjects across the city to go to their lectures, maybe to go to their extracurriculars. So they'll be using facilities across the university, but they'll also be part of this small campus, which is their college. These are just some pictures of the college system or the collegiate system. There's a picture here with the candles on the tables and the people wearing gowns. That is something that is very specific to Oxford and Cambridge, which we call our formal dinners, where students will dress up like these students are in gowns. They don't have to, but they often do. And they'll sit down and be served a 3-course meal. It's something that most people are not used to before they go to a place like Cambridge, and everyone's kind of in the same boat of experiencing that for the first time. You get a lot of free ones in your time at Cambridge, and there's also themed formals. So you might get to go to one of the ones that we had when I was a student was a Harry Potter themed formal. So we had owls flying over in that hall that you can see pictured there. You can also see on here that really small group, that photo with 3 people discussing something. That is another thing that's really specific to Cambridge and Oxford. It is our supervision or tutorial system, where students get additional really small group teaching, as well as their really much bigger group teaching, to go over anything that they haven't understood, and to get feedback on their latest piece of work, which is a huge advantage compared to just going to a huge lecture hall where you wouldn't get that opportunity to talk to that expert. This kind of summarizes some of what I've said. So each student is part of one of the 31 colleges at the university. They're places where students belong to a small community, where they sleep, they socialise, they eat, make a lot of their friends, get a lot of support and take part in activities, but they're not connected to what students are studying. So for instance, you could be a student at Homerton College and studying any subject, and what you would do is you would then go to your, if you were studying maths, you would go to the maths department to your lectures, and you'd meet other people there who are also studying maths, but they might be living at any other college. This is, sorry about the fact that I keep clearing my throat, I'm a little bit ill. This is just to explain where you belong as a Cambridge student. When you're a student here, you belong to 3 main bubbles. You're going to belong to your college, where you'll be living. I've explained what you do in your college. You're then part of a second community, which is the one for your faculty or department. So I gave the example of maths. If you're studying maths, it will be the maths department that's determining what you're learning and your exams. And finally, you'll be part of the university as a whole. where you'll get loads more support and resources, and it's also the university that awards you your degree and not the college. So everyone gets a degree from the University of Cambridge, regardless of what college they've gone to. These are just kind of some strengths of studying at Cambridge: the amazing facilities, contact with the very best minds, personal supervision and support, and a close level of care, pastoral care as well, beyond the academic stuff, because you are in this small community where there's so much support. Just some pictures of Cambridge as a city. If you've never gone to Cambridge, then I'd encourage you, and this is also for other universities, to go to open days, to try and find out as much as you can about what it might be like to actually live in that city, because when you're a student, you're not just in your lecture halls, you're also out there going to discover a new city and having fun and exploring. So it's really worth making sure that you'd be comfortable in that city that you're going to be moving to. If you move away from your current city, village, or wherever you're living. And at Cambridge, we have open days in July. So the 4th and 5th of July, you can come and visit Cambridge and everything is open. We also run tours of Homerton throughout the year. I'll be able to, if you look up tours of Homerton College, you'll find that immediately. And if you look up Cambridge open days, you'll find that as well. I'm just going to have a look at a question. When do you think is the right time to go to open days? When the open days are, I was going to say when the open days are open. When the universities have their open days, does Cambridge allow commuter students? Almost everyone live in college. I usually, in your first year, they'd rather that you lived in college so that everyone's kind of in the same community, getting to know each other. But later on, you can choose to, if you're sort of living not too far away, you do generally need to be close. So they'd probably only allow you not to be living in Cambridge for particular reasons. Most people do choose to live in Cambridge. I'm going to go back to my presentation. So a little bit about the history of the University of Cambridge. It was founded in the 13th century. It's one of the world's oldest universities, and it's among the 3 best in the world. A lot of famous people have studied there. You might recognize some of these names, maybe some of these pictures, and over 120 people who were connected to the university have been awarded the Nobel Prize since 1904. That is a lot of people. One of the colleges actually has more Nobel Prize winners than France, which is kind of crazy. And what I'm trying to show you with this is not that everyone who goes to Cambridge gets a Nobel Prize at all, or that everyone is a genius, but it's really just to show you that these people have gone to Cambridge and they've gained the support to go on and do amazing things, the motivation and the support. So hopefully that's a little bit inspiring. Different types of teaching at university. So lectures is a type of teaching that you'll get at a lot of universities, which are really big groups like you can see on this picture. Seminars, they're usually about 50 people discussing, sorry, not 50, that's, could be anywhere from 20 to 50 people discussing a topic. Practicals you might get, or labs, field trips you might get. You would definitely have time for independent study. And this is the Cambridge and Oxford specific one, those supervisions, or Oxford call them tutorials, which are really small group teaching that you have in addition to your other teaching. And you normally get that anywhere from 5 times a week to once every 2 weeks, depending on what subject you're studying. I'm just going to take a question that I saw which was, is this also relevant to Oxford? Does everything also apply to Oxford? Not everything that I'm going to be talking about in this whole program will apply to Oxford, but there's so many similarities that most of it will. Where it will differ is small things like sort of choosing a college or specific assessment things that might be a bit different. Social life and opportunities for development. So university is not just about that time in the lecture halls. Even at a place like Cambridge, which is really kind of academic, people spend a huge amount of time doing other things than studying. There are over 500 societies at the university level, and that's without counting all the ones in every college. So you can be part of a society in your college, just with the people at Homerton, for instance, or you can be part of a society which mixes people from lots of different colleges. There's loads of opportunities to have a social life and opportunities for development as well, such as internships or volunteering. Lots of opportunities to develop outside of your degree, and most of these things will be free. They'll be included within your course. I'm just having a look through the questions to see which bits are relevant. So choosing a course is the next bit that I'll be talking to you about. I've put here a list of the Cambridge courses, but this is just kind of to show you them. Obviously, look at all courses at all universities that you're interested in. How you might go about choosing a course. We'd recommend looking at what you enjoy. So think really carefully about, what do I actually like? What will I enjoy doing for that many hours? For, you know, spending all of your time for 3 years focusing on a subject. That's quite a lot of time. So think really carefully about what you enjoy. Think about what you're good at. Think about your subject combination currently and what might be a good choice related to that. Think about how the course is structured, taught, or examined. Think about and the modules on offer. So 2 courses might both be called physics, but it might be that one of them is all taught, I don't know, through seminars and is examined through coursework. And the modules are about, I don't know, astrophysics and something else. Obviously, there'll be a huge amount of that. The modules are the different classes you can take within a course. But then there'll be another course called physics, where it's entirely lectures and it's examined through exams, and the modules are really different, and it focuses on, I don't know, mechanical physics or something completely different. So have a look really at those details and what you really want to be learning about. Entry requirements, make sure that you're on track to get those. And be open to new subjects as well that might be a little bit different from the ones that you have done in school, but that might really interest you. I didn't say, but I actually went to Cambridge. I studied at Cambridge myself before starting working here, and I studied a course called Education with English and Drama, and that was really different to what I had done in school before. I could sort of relate to the English and drama bits that you can do in school, but the education was a social science that combined lots of things that I'd done in different subjects, like philosophy. It combines bits of sociology, psychology, lots of different things. And I didn't know about that course until I started doing that research. I didn't sort of grow up thinking, oh, I want to study education. So it's really worth being aware that there might be, you might find courses that you don't know about. I can see people who've got hands up. Make sure that, unfortunately, we can't allow you to. Oh, for now, we're not going to allow people to unmute. So put any questions in the Q&A. but we might be able to do that at the end if you wanted to ask something out loud. I wanted to mention as well the Cambridge Foundation Year. It's a new fully funded year at Cambridge to prepare for a degree in arts and humanities. So a lot of universities have foundation years, and they're essentially a one-year course generally, which will prepare you to get up to the level that you need to start that course, to start a course at that university. It's for students who've had quite a lot of disruption to their education. I've put some examples of what that might be here, but the list is really, really long. There's lower entrance requirements than for our other courses and no specific subject requirements, and it's all paid for. So it's all free to the students who go on that course. And once they've done that sort of broad year, getting those foundations, getting up to the level, they will start a course in arts or humanities at Cambridge. It's a really exciting course that's quite new and worth considering if you think, actually, I'm really capable of getting those grades, but I've had so many things that have affected me over my education that I haven't actually been able to achieve those, even though I have the potential to. So that's out there for you if you want to consider it. A little bit more about choosing a course. This was not actually done by me, but somebody who studied history at university put together this kind of mind map, which was her trying to work out, her A-levels were history, English literature, and art or graphic design. And she was trying to work out what subject she might want to do at university. So she kind of mapped out her A-levels and explored connections between what was she actually enjoying, what am I enjoying in English. She was enjoying particular bits of English, and particularly how the texts were perceived in the context, in the historical context. History, she really enjoyed history, and thought about the different things that she enjoyed within history. And then within art, she also kind of really enjoyed historical aspects of art. And so she decided to go and study history, even though she probably would have been great at either of those courses, any of those courses, because she realized that was where her interests really were. So this is just an option, something you can do where you kind of map out, what am I interested in? What are my A-levels? What should I go and study? But this is for the people who haven't decided yet. Make sure that you are taking the right subjects. So this one is a hard one because obviously most of you will have already made those choices, but what I'm trying to show you is just making sure that you're on the right track. If you're interested in arts and humanities, typically there's no required subjects for most universities for loads of those social science courses. Often they'll tell you that good preparation is English, history, maths, languages, but you don't have to be taking those by any means. And this links to a question that I saw at some point. Do people get accepted into courses even if they don't pick the recommended subjects? So for instance, here, if you were looking at law and they said history is good preparation for law, you could definitely get into a law course without history. But then there'll be times when it is more prescriptive. So for maths and science courses, they do tend to say, we would like you to have some of these subjects, maths, chemistry, biology, physics, further maths. So it might be that a course says, we want you to be taking biology. And then in that case, you would struggle to get into the course if you're not taking that subject. At Cambridge, a lot of the courses require further maths, which is something to be aware of as well. If you're looking at courses like economics, physics, maths, computer science, engineering, a lot of them will say we strongly recommend further maths, or we almost require it. If you're not taking it, there are things that you can do to try and kind of get up to that level to showcase the fact that you have that additional maths ability. And you can ask a question about that if you'd like to find out more. If you're kind of hesitating between subjects, you can act between subjects to choose. Maybe you're thinking of dropping a subject, you're not sure whether you should. You can actually have a look on the Cambridge website at what typical applicants who were successful were taking. So you can look at, let's say, law, and you'll find that lots of people, it will say, I don't know, 60%, that's not an accurate statistic, but it will say 60% of people who went on to study law were taking history at A level. And it's just quite helpful to get a sense of what those people were taking. In terms of how many A levels to take, we'd say 3 are sufficient. If you're not taking A levels, then please do ask a question related to your qualifications. I can absolutely answer that. 3 A levels are sufficient unless you're applying for a course which requires further maths, in which case we could recommend taking 4 A levels, because maths and further maths are often viewed as easier to take together than 2 completely different A levels. But you don't have to take 4. It's just to say that in most cases, 3 A levels is a really competitive combination. In some cases, you could be even more competitive by taking 4, but you don't have to. For people not taking A levels, I realise that this is not the most useful slide. One thing I will mention is that for anyone, is there anyone here who is taking Scottish qualifications? Can you put your hand up? So those, I think some people already have hands up, maybe because you have questions. Can we have any hands up for somebody anyone joining from Scotland, taking Scottish qualifications or Welsh qualifications, or from Northern Ireland? It looks like we don't have any, unless I haven't noticed you. Oh, maybe. If you did have specific questions about your qualifications, then we can absolutely answer those. There might also be people who are not taking A levels, maybe taking vocational qualifications, more vocational like BTECs, maybe some taking the IB. So do let us know and we can answer those specific questions. In terms of subjects to choose, there's also a good resource you can have a look at called the Subject Matters, which is quite helpful for looking at which subjects are helpful for which courses. Remember that the degree that you choose, even though this is all about choosing degrees, doesn't define your future. So these are just some examples of what people have done after particular degrees. After an engineering degree, people have gone into such a wide range. This is in 1 year what people went on to do. And it goes from manufacturing spacecraft to business development, business and domestic software development. After a geography degree, some people went into law, some people went into manufacturing food products, some people went into environmental consulting. That is just some examples. After English, some people went into advertising, some went into performing arts, some went into public relations, so more like kind of politics and communicating between companies, and some went into television program production activities. So that's just to show you how broad the options are afterwards. When you're choosing your degree, you're not choosing your future. You're choosing what you're going to be doing for the next 3, maybe 4 years, maybe 6 years if you're looking at a longer course like medicine. If you are looking at a more vocational course like medicine, then yes, you are making more choices. You are choosing to kind of commit to more of a job, but equally you can still change your mind down the line. How to choose a college. So I've got a few slides left, and I'm going to, as I can see there's lots of questions, I'm going to do the 3 final slides, and then there's going to be plenty of time for questions. So how to choose a college. This is a Cambridge specific slide. You might know that when you apply to Cambridge, you have to pick a college, and it's really weird because we have these 31 colleges. They're all kind of independent, but also all part of the same university. And the admissions at Cambridge is done through the colleges individually, rather than just the whole university together. And that is really confusing. It confused me when I was applying, for sure, and it still confuses me now, in the way that the colleges kind of all have their own minds, but also all work together. It's a real plus. It's a great thing in the experience, but it also can be confusing when you're applying. So this is how we'd recommend choosing a course if you want to choose a college, sorry. Check that your course is offered at the college that you're looking at. So not all colleges offer every course. Make sure that it's appropriate for your age. So there are a few colleges that are only for students over 21. Make sure it's appropriate for your gender. There are 2 colleges that only consider applications from female students. Then after that, you can look at things like the size. How many students do they take? Do I want to be in a bigger community or a smaller community? The appearance, the type of accommodation. Do I want it to be, I don't know, more modern, more new? Do I want the accommodation to be en suite and so I have my own bathroom? At Homerton, most of the rooms are en suite. Do I want to have particular facilities? Do I want to have a swimming pool in the college? Some colleges have a swimming pool. Equally, there would be a swimming pool to access with the university facilities, even if there isn't one in your college. So it doesn't really matter about those facilities. And most colleges will have the same facilities in terms of library and gym and dining hall and accommodation. Personal instinct. So do you like the look of it? Do you feel that it would be a place where you'd like to be? You're going to get to meet lots of Homerton students in a few sessions on this course. You can ask them lots of questions. Maybe you'll find that you really feel that they're really friendly. I'm hoping that you will feel that, because it is a really friendly place. And that actually, you know what, I think I want to apply to Homerton. There's a lot of reasons why you might choose to apply to Homerton, but we're absolutely happy for you not to do that. We're not running this course at Homerton saying you have to apply to Homerton at all. We're just one of the colleges, and we're here to tell you all of the options out there. Obviously, we'd be very happy if you do choose to apply to Homerton, and I can answer any questions specific to Homerton if you'd like to find out more. But this session is really more broad than that. This kind of ties into what I've just said. Ultimately, college choice doesn't matter very much. So colleges are much more similar than they are different. Everyone settles in quickly, loves the college they're at, and it's the university, not your college, that determines what you're learning. So everyone's learning the same thing regardless of what college they're at. And on top of that, it doesn't affect your chances of getting in. So we have a really good system called the pooling system, whereby anyone, so basically the best candidates are made an offer regardless of what college they apply to, because there's kind of, I can explain this in more detail if you want to, you can ask a question about it, but essentially there's some work done behind the scenes where we make sure that the best applicants get an offer, even if, let's say, they've all the best applicants for maths have all applied to one college, they'll be kind of reallocated. So 1 in 5 people will actually be made an offer from a college that isn't the one that they applied to, or isn't the one that they were allocated to. I didn't mention that's because you can, if you don't want to choose a college, you can make an open application, which means you don't choose a specific college and then you'll be allocated to one. But ultimately, you might not get an offer from that one that you spent hours choosing or that you were allocated to. So it's not really something to worry about too much. This is the last slide from me before we go on to 15 minutes of Q&A. For now, explore and develop your interests. Have a look at all of those courses and universities available to you. Look at the websites, look at the open days, look at the courses, descriptions. Spend some time on UCAS, which is the website where all universities put their courses on and everyone applies to university in the UK. And on top of that, spend some time really exploring what you're doing in your A-levels and what you're enjoying, so in your current qualifications, and developing your interests outside of school as well. So that might be through reading any books you can read, any kind of watching a video on YouTube, a TED Talk, a podcast, reading a quick article online about something that you're interested in, taking part in more. We have something coming up, our essay program and our design programs coming up, which are really great programs where you get to create your own essay or create your own design on a sustainable topic, and then come to a summer school at the end of that. You'll be able to find them if you look them up, but I can also send you the link to those if you want to. That's just an example. There's loads of programs out there to learn more about your subject. And we have a resource section on our website as well, where you can find things that you can be reading and doing outside to find out more. Because when you come to applying, you'll be having to really talk about those additional things that you've done, and I'll talk about that more in the personal statement session. But universities will want to see that you love your subject so much that you want to be doing more outside of school. That is everything from me for this session, and now I'm going to have a look at all of the questions that I haven't answered. If you haven't submitted your question yet and you want to, go ahead and do that now. Go to slido.com and put in the code Homerton. I've also put in here our social media and our email that you can follow or get in touch with us on. First question, how significant are GCSEs? I think there's a few questions about that. How much does GCSE grades matter when applying? So the answer to that is that they don't matter very much, in the sense that we'll be much more interested in your predicted A-levels or your predicted advanced hires or the qualifications that you are about to take. But we will be looking at that. To be honest, a lot of people who are applying to Cambridge are going to apply with good grades at GCSEs. But if for some reason there is a grade that you're not very happy with in your GCSEs, and it's very related to the subject you want to apply for. So let's say you want to study history and your GCSE history was not what you wanted it to be, was kind of quite a bit lower than what you're predicted in your A-level for history, then we'd probably be looking at that and sort of trying to understand why there's been such a gap in that. Why have you suddenly got really good at history and suddenly really wanted to study it in depth at university? And typically your teacher might be able to explain in your reference why there is that gap. Maybe there's been some reason why you did less well before. So make sure that you've told the teacher to put that in. But if it's, let's say you want to study history and your maths grade or your physics grade at GCSE is not so good, they really won't be bothered about that. So in other words, it doesn't matter too much unless it's specifically for the course you're looking at and you did particularly less well than you expected, and then in which case do let us know. But either way, please don't worry about this because you've already taken those assessments. That's done. So, you know, there's no point worrying about that. Have a look at what you've got and what your options. Be positive. Don't already think that, you know, you're doomed because you haven't got the right grades already. How long will the recordings be available for? Good question. I'll need to check that. Definitely sort of until you apply, so you'll be able to use this when you're applying. I'll make sure that's the case. I'll make a note of that just because I know that Teams has a weird way of making things disappear at some points, and they put an expiration date on these things, so I'll make sure. I'm assuming that's what you meant, in that you wouldn't want it available after that, but you were thinking, just can I have this kind of to look at when I'm really coming to writing my application? Next question, what do the UCAT tests normally test us on? What the specification asks. So that's a really specific question. Oh, there's lots of questions coming in. Wow, I'm going to try and go through these. I'm going to try and leave the really specific ones just because so for the UCAT test, we're going to be talking about tests in a session that's on assessments. So I don't want to sort of dwell on that now. It's very specific to applying to medicine. It's a lot of biology, it's a lot of chemistry, and stuff that's related to medicine. Everything is available on the website if you look up UCAT tests. There might also be a student ambassador that went in our Q&A session that has studied medicine that will be able to answer that. I'll try and see if we can get a medicine student come to that session. Could you say a city university has buildings spread across the city and a collegiate university has groups of buildings, each group somewhere in the city? Sort of, but I'd say it's more just that a collegiate university has that additional college system where you're living in this kind of campus. Do the courses come with a master's or is that a separate choice? Some of them do. Things like natural sciences, engineering, that's the two that I can think of right now. They come with a sort of built-in master's. You don't automatically progress onto it. You have to kind of do well to progress onto the master's, but you can do that directly. Equally, you can go do a master's degree afterwards, regardless of what undergraduate degree you did, you can apply for one. What is the difference between HSPS and other similar courses such as economics or politics? So again, I'll make a note to try and have a HSPS student come, but I can't guarantee that. It's a course that's really broad. Have a look at the website. It's got so many different bits to it, like anthropology, sociology, that you might never have looked at before. It's definitely much broader than a course such as economics or politics. Just looking through, seeing if there are any that I can group. If I choose to do engineering, but I wanted to switch to the management part 2 course, would I still get credit for the engineering course? How does that work? Really good question. It took me a while to understand that. So you then get a management degree. You would be able to put on your CV engineering part 1, management part 2. Will the course list have all possible course combinations? For instance, physics and philosophy isn't on the course list. Does that mean it's not offered? Yes, that does mean it's not offered, so it will all be there. Does being selected for this program mean that everyone here is capable of being a potential successful applicant for Cambridge? It means that we think that if you work really hard and you really want to do this, then you can. Whether, you know, I can't say whether or not you are going to be successful because I don't know. I haven't looked at an application yet. But already just being on this program and actually having the dedication to come to this after school, even though I know that you're probably really tired, is a really good sign that you're on the right track. If you were to take 4 A-levels and get a conditional offer, would it be based off of just doing well on the 3 required or all 4? If you're taking 4 A-levels, you might get an offer based on 4, which I know sounds a bit mean, but for some reason academics do that. If you're taking 4, it might be based on 4, in which case it might look something like A star. For arts and humanities, it might look something like A star, A. For sciences, it might look something like A star, A. If you get a conditional offer for AAA, but you get A star, AB, for example, can you still get this offer? Good question. A lot of that, to be honest, might be at the discretion of the university person who's looking at it. It will depend. The B there might be an issue, but it will depend on the situation. If you do 3 A-levels, including further maths, can an EPQ make your application just as competitive? I think it would definitely showcase that you're doing other things, that you can manage a bigger workload. So yes, it would look good, but you don't have to take an EPQ for those, because we know not everybody has that offer to take it at their school. But yes, I think that would still showcase that you're doing a lot of work. If I was taking 4 A-levels and have dropped down to 3, will dropping a subject look bad on an application if I take further maths? Well, if you've already dropped, then it's not worth asking. If you're thinking of whether or not to drop it, if it's like related, so sciencey, mathsy subject, then maybe keep it. I would suggest if it's really unrelated, like it's art, then maybe it won't make too much of a difference to drop it. Would level 3 equivalent but foreign qualifications outside Europe be accepted too? Yes. You can email us to ask the specific details of that, or ask another question. Just to say, I'm aware that there is quite a few more questions to answer, and that it's 4 minutes before the end. I'm happy to stay a bit beyond to answer your questions, but I just want to say it is fine if you have to leave at 6 p.m. You can leave at 6 p.m. at the end of this session. And I'll try and get through the questions. What I'll probably do is I'll answer the ones that are already here now, and I won't do any more than that. So the last one I can see here, I will answer, but probably stop submitting questions now. If you have more, then there'll be all of the other sessions where you can ask questions, or you can email us. Oh, I've just seen another one come in. Or you can email us as well. I'm in Scotland. What would be the equivalent to further maths in advanced hires? The closest equivalent is maths of mechanics or maths of statistics. We know it's really hard if you're in Scotland to access a lot of what you need for Cambridge. It might be that you need to go to another school to take that qualification. A lot of schools don't offer the advanced hire in those subjects. So definitely put on your application if you had to kind of do that independently or go to another school, because we know that's more work for you and we want to kind of take that into account. When applying to Cambridge for medicine, do you have to pick a college? Yes, for all subjects, but you can just make an open application if you don't want to. How important are GCSEs when applying? There aren't any minimum requirements, but what are the lowest acceptable grades? I can't really give that because it just completely depends on the person and the subject. The answer is you can't change that now. So, it's either you apply and you take a shot and it's one of your 5 choices, and the worst thing that can go wrong is that you don't get in, and that's fine because you'll have other choices, but you can't change those GCSEs now. I believe I qualify for a sporting blue in swimming. Would you recommend certain colleges for this? Not specifically, no. I think Girton and Emmanuel have pools, but to be honest, if you're looking to do swimming competitively, you're probably wanting to go to a bigger pool. We have a really good Cambridge, just for the whole university and for the whole of the city, Cambridge Lido. So it's an outdoor pool. I think it's 100 meters long. We also have another indoor pool called Parkside Pools, which is really good for training as well. So and there's another one at the University Sports. There'll be loads of other pools, so it doesn't really matter on having a small one in your college, which I don't think you would want to use anyway if you're looking at doing it really competitively. How important are GCSEs? I have answered that. What is accommodation like at Homerton? How much does it cost? Good question. What is it like? I think that's a question that you should ask the students when we get to them. When I was a student, I thought it was really nice. Most of our accommodation is en suite, so you get your own little bathroom, you get a shared kitchen, that's a separate space. There'll be a bed, a desk. You can look at some pictures online. All of the students are housed on site during their whole time here. The first years will usually be put all together. Then after that, you get to kind of pick what blocks you want to live in. It's now 6 p.m, so if anyone wants to go at this point, then feel free to do that. I'll stay on a little bit longer to answer the final questions, and then we will wrap up after that. How much does it cost? It will depend on the specific accommodation block, so I think it's best that I don't share a specific amount here, especially as it depends in every college as well. It's different. And I don't know the updated rates. If you look it up, then that should be published online. Any recommendations on how to show you have a higher maths ability, even if you're not taking further maths? So there are some things like Isaac Physics is a really good website. Look at the and the STEP website as well. So you'll have to take an additional assessment called the STEP exam, and that's going to be really helpful. So the STEP and Isaac Physics are two things that would be really good. There's others, but that's a really good start. There's loads of resources on there. What extracurriculars or supercurriculars are recommended when applying to Cambridge? Extracurriculars, none. You don't need to be taking extracurriculars. Supercurriculars, anything that engages with your subject outside of school. You can have a look at, if you type in Homerton College resources, you'll be able to find resources for particular subjects. So have a look at our webpage and you can find for particular subjects recommended reading and articles and things. When does Cambridge still take into account regular extracurriculars? So that ties into what I've just said. We're not as interested in anything that you're doing outside that is not relevant to your subject. We're much more interested in things that are relevant to your academic subject. Is it favourable to do an EPQ? As I said, not all schools offer an EPQ, so we can't say you're definitely going to be stronger if you're taking one, but we can say that if you are taking one and you're really engaged and interested in it and you're enjoying it and it's related to the subject you want to study, then of course it's only going to help you, it's only going to make you kind of learn more, but we can't say it will make your application that much stronger. How much time is spent in lectures and supervisions? Completely depends. Again, I think it's best that you leave this question for the student Q&A because it will vary hugely from subject to subject. More science-based subjects will have more time in lectures and supervisions. More arts-based subjects will have less time and more time kind of on your own in the library or wherever you want to work. It varies. Have a look on the website, you'll be able to find. They'll tell you something like contact hours. Contact hours is how many lectures and supervisions. At Cambridge, are you allowed to go home on weekends? Yes, you are. If it's doable, if you can reach home at the weekend. Can you still apply to Cambridge, Oxford with 7s as your lowest GCSE grade? As I said, I don't think it's worth going into specifics of grades. Yes, you know, do apply, because the biggest, I think you'd be much more disappointed if you didn't get in, if you didn't get in just because you didn't apply rather than because, you know, you might as well try. They're not going to be hugely bothered by your GCSEs. Will there be a session on information or on admissions tests? Yes. It won't go into too many specifics of every single test, just because that would take a huge amount of time. But we are running later in the year some things called subject focus sessions. We'll have a specific law one, because this person, you're asking about the LNAT, the law assessment, and then you can ask specifically the law director of studies about the law assessment, and that would be an ideal place to ask about that. How significant is it to have done any competitions related to your subject? That would count as a really good supercurricular, so really good to do. You don't have to do it, but if you've done it, definitely mention it. It definitely will look good. Does Cambridge ever give out offers higher than the minimum entry requirements for a course? So, unlikely. What it's worth knowing is that people do tend to perform better than the what we call the minimum entry requirement. So they'll make you an offer that's typically A star AA for arts and humanities or A star A for sciences, but actually a lot of people do perform better than that. So no, they don't usually give you anything higher than that, but people do tend to be kind of working at like aiming even higher than that, or I guess just achieving higher than that. So that's sort of the people that you're up against in a way. If you do a summer school that's not at Cambridge, will they'll still see that as an interest in what you want to study? Yes, absolutely. Anything you get involved with, even if it's with another university, it shows that you're really engaged, that you're trying to find those opportunities, just like you guys right now sat in this webinar. You're trying to learn more, you're trying to make the most out of the opportunities that are out there for you, and that's always going to be a really good thing. How does taking Scottish or Welsh, Northern Irish qualifications change in your applications? That's a huge question. Essentially, it will just change sort of the requirements. When I said it's a huge question, I mean, obviously it's different for different subjects and different places. It's just that whatever qualifications you're taking, we're going to adapt the offer to that qualification and make it an equal offer. Is it possible for someone to apply for a course at Cambridge, but they get pulled into another course? No, you would only get pulled into another college. How will a potential applicant build a passion for their chosen course, and how will they describe their choice to apply to a college like Homerton? I'm just going to say, I'm going to wrap this up at 10 past, just because, yeah, otherwise there will be more and more questions coming in, but I'm going to do some more questions until then. How would you build a passion? Do those extra reading, look at that, this slide that I was showing you, and keep attending this program, because there'll be lots more. In the case of medicine, how much leeway does a student have in terms of considering other options? You can consider other options. I'm not sure if you mean before you go on to doing it or when you're actually in the course, but there is space to consider other options. Can you put this program on your personal statement? Yeah, absolutely. Is there a maximum number of successful applicants per school? Not that I'm aware of. What kind of work experience, especially for medicine, is definitely required? Anything that you can do that shows that you know you have a sense of what a medical career might entail in a care home, in pharmacy, anything you can get will be really valued. If you do 3 A-levels, including further maths, can an EPQ note you? I've already answered that one. When should I start preparing for assessment tests like the LNAT? Probably in the summer of year 12 is when I would start doing that. What step grade do I need to study maths, computer science, or economics? Not all of those will say that you have to take the step paper. It's definitely a compulsory for maths. Normally it's a 1 in both, but have a look exactly on the Cambridge website for your course. Can you go to the previous slide? That's a little bit too late. How high would you say people have to perform in entrance exams to give an offer? There isn't actually a set score, so most of the time they'll just be comparing applicants and see how people are doing. Who reads our personal statement? Is it a professor for the course we applied for? Yes. So yeah, the admissions team will probably be kind of looking through things, but mostly it will go to the specific person that is relevant. They will absolutely see it. What would you recommend doing now? Attending this course, everything will be in this course. What countries are included in the year abroad? For the language course, it's up to you. I think it's pretty broad which country you can go to. When during your course, before your course, should you specify you want to do a master's integrated when you're applying? Are there any international connections, opportunities for a year abroad? Yes, in the language course, a modern and medieval languages course. When applying to Cambridge for medicine, do you have to pick a college? Yes. Are there any preferred supercurriculars for maths? Have a look at our resources section of the website. Can you share the PowerPoint with us afterwards? Yes, I'll be able to do that. Would you be able to ask a law student to participate? I can try that. It's difficult to get students on board, but I can try my best. If you do 3 A-level student, nope, I think I've answered that already. Does participating in Cambridge-related events help? Yes, it can only help. Is there a maximum number of successful applicants per school? How do we learn about colleges more? Websites, social media, visiting if you can. Could a potential law student come to the panel? I've said I'm going to try that. How much is an EPQ considered? I've already answered that. What would a typical grade offer look like for economics? A star, 8A. Are AS grades used to see if you can get your predicted A-level grades? They will look at them, yes, if you already have them. Can you apply to Cambridge twice for different courses? No. What is the prettiest college? I'm going to say Homerton because I'm biased, but you should have a look at the websites, come and visit for yourself on the open day and make that decision. Is there a bursary for studying at Cambridge? There is, and I'm going to touch on, well, there's something called the Cambridge Bursary. Yes, I'm going to touch on it in the next session, well, the session that is on financing university. Is which college looks the most classical? I don't know. I don't know what you mean by classical. The oldest college is Peterhouse. Can you move from a course leaning from engineering into business or management? And if so, would you have enough time to do an internship to gain experience? You can do sort of engineering and then move on to management. Yes, it is possible. I'd advise that you do some research, work out what you really want to do first, but we do have a part 2 course called management that you can go on to after an engineering degree. So you can have a look at that. Can an essay competition work as an equivalent to an EPQ? Yeah, it will look really good to have done an essay competition. I sent this about 6 minutes ago, but you haven't seen it. Is there a maximum number of successful applicants per school? So I'm thinking that you mean, is there like a cap for each school on how many people we take? No, because we look at people individually with all of their context, not really as sort of by school. Does Cambridge offer contextual offers? Not really, but we take into account everything else. So we won't change the offer, but we'll take into account when we decide who to take based on performance interview and things. We'll bear in mind the context of that, everything else around you, maybe things that might have affected your performance interview, etc. Is there a year abroad for maths? No. And is the IGCSE accepted? Good question. I would have to check that. So you can email access@homerton.cam.ac.uk and ask that, because I'm not entirely sure. It might also be very clear on our website. I've managed to get through all the questions. It is 13 minutes past 6, so a little bit later than I intended, but that's okay. We might try and stick to the time a bit more for the others, just because I'm conscious that some of you would have maybe preferred it to finish at 6. At least it was just the bit of your questions that overran. But thank you so much for attending. Hope that that was useful, and I look forward to seeing you for the next session, which is happening on Thursday. Somebody says, I meant the Cambridge International Examination, IGCSE. Yes, I have to check that because I'm not entirely sure. Even people who work at Cambridge don't know everything. It takes quite a while to understand all of the different things. But the website is your friend, is your best friend. It has everything on there. Thank you so much for attending and have a good evening. Goodbye, everyone.